So I've been playing Risk of Rain 2 for a while, and as it turns out, Risk of Rain 2 is a pretty tough game. So I wanted to create a list in this video to show some of the items that I personally like to see in my runs. So I wouldn't say these items are the strongest per se, because all items have their specific use in certain scenarios. However, maybe this will help you, because I know it's been helping me get through beating Monsoon for the first time, and sluggishly getting through those early Eclipse levels. Yeah, I've still not even managed one win with Captain. I will be limiting it to just one item per rarity, just to make this list a little bit more interesting. So the first item I want to mention is Gasoline. It's really good because it's one of the only AoE items in the game, and for being a common, you actually get it quite often. But what does it actually do? So when you kill an enemy, it ignites all enemies within 12 meters plus 4 meters per stack for 150% base damage. Additionally, enemies will burn for 150% plus 75% per stack base damage. What makes this item so handy is that when you're running around, there's going to be a lot of enemies that are weaker than the elites or the boss that you are fighting. So the air enemies or the little guys running around you. And what you want to do is take them out so you can focus on the actual threat. If you happen to have a pretty solid amount of stacks, I would say anywhere around 5 to 10 is a pretty good number for what you can expect for an Eclipse run. It can set off a chain reaction where a lot of these smaller enemies that are not active threats to you will just wipe each other out if you just kill one. So while you're fighting, you shoot one, it sets off a chain reaction, killing a bunch of enemies around you, and then you can focus on the boss, which makes the game easier. The additional burn status effect that is on this item is also really handy because I often find that, especially once you get through to the later stages, Gasoline will not always one-shot all the enemies, even the weaker ones, but the burn is there, so it will slowly tick through their health, and usually I feel like that finishes them off, or not, it'll usually leave them pretty weak. This item also pairs incredibly well with the green rarity item Ignition Tank. The Ignition Tank increases ignite effects by 300%, also 300% per stack, more damage over time. Having two of these items paired up in your run is really good for the early to mid game, because by late game you are usually pretty strong against most enemies, so you kind of want to be more focusing towards bosses, but hey, maybe that's just me. The next item I want to talk about on this list is the Sail Star. So what does the Sail Star do? It grants an extra item on the first chest opened per stage. If you can manage to get this item early on, it should, in theory, equate to an easier run. You want to be getting the most amount of items during your run because you want to be as strong as you can possibly be by the time you reach Mithrix on stage 6. So if you have this item, each stage you are at least getting an extra item, but there's also a little trick that you can use with this item. If you have this item, you can actually enter stage 4 and save up enough money to be able to purchase the legendary chest first in the stage. If you have this item, you can actually get 2 reds for the price of 1 legendary chest by just simply buying it first on the map. It does require a little bit of strategy because you don't want to be buying an item before that from a chest or a large chest or something like that. So you want to be able to actually survive long enough to get the legendary chest, to get double the red items. So it's a little bit of a risk versus reward, but if you can manage to pull it off, it can lead to a really successful run. I would like to add a little caveat to that, just because you can't do this trick on every single stage in level 4. However, if you're worried about that, you can just go into the bazaar and pick which map you want to load into, so you can guarantee yourself these things easier throughout your run. The only real bad thing about this item is that it is locked to a DLC, the Seekers of the Storm DLC, and me personally, I also find that you don't really get it that often. One in maybe a few games you'll see it, but it's not really that common. But if I have to say one last good thing about it, it is really good for looped runs. If you're going past stage 6 or you're not doing eclipse, you're just doing loop runs, it's really good because there's a little additional ability to this item where each additional sales star increases the chance of getting more items by 5%. So if you have a few sales stars stacked up and you're going through stages and you're opening up chests, you will find that sometimes you will get 3 items from one chest, or 4. I've even had it go up to 5. So if you're doing loop runs, it's really good to have this item. The next item I want to talk about is the Pocket ICBM, which honestly, this might be my favorite, if not top 5, easily top 5 in the whole game. So what the Pocket ICBM does is all missile items and equipment fire an additional 2 missiles, and it increases missile damage by 0% plus 50% per stack. So essentially, any item like the ATG or fireworks gets an additional 2 missiles per time it gets activated. The base ability here is actually strong enough to the point where I don't think stacking is required, but it still helps. The only purpose stacking has here in this item is that your damage will go up by 50%, like I mentioned, so you won't be firing any additional missiles other than the 2 that you're already doing with the base ability. So if you get a few more of this item, it's still good, but it's not required. So everything I've said so far about this item, it makes it seem really good. However, you do actually need the missile item or equipment that fires missiles first before this item will do any sort of actual change. So what are some of those items? I really like ATG and fireworks for the Pocket ICBM because ATG on its own is already really strong. So if you're adding 2 more missiles, and remember these are tracking missiles that do explosion damage, so if you have a lot of enemies in an area all grouped up, it will most likely hit all of them. I did also mention fireworks, and even though on its own when you're running around the stage opening chests, the fireworks increasing that amount will help out there too, so it's really good for mobbing. However, there is a nice little trick you can do if you manage to get the vending machine equipment. In the game, this is called the Remote Caffeinator, and it is from the Survivors of the Void expansion, so keep that in mind. But if you manage to get one of these and you're at the Mithrax boss fight, or even any other boss fight for that matter, you can summon this vending machine in, and every time you activate it, you can get some healing items. However, it will also shoot out missiles. So what you can do is summon one of these things in, spend a bunch of money, and then all those missiles will go straight to the boss. So if you manage to get that pairing up, that is a devastating combo with really infinite damage potential, depending on how many fireworks you have, and ICBMs, and other items that boost damage. So the next item I want to talk about on this list is the Charged Perforator from the yellow category. So what does it do? The Charged Perforator has a 10% chance on hit to down a lightning strike, dealing 500% plus 500% per stack damage. This is probably the best yellow in the game, definitely top 3, mostly because I find it very consistent. There are some other items that kind of have area effects, but this one lands wherever target is, so you're doing damage consistently to the enemy, whether it's a small enemy, a boss, or whatever. This is also an extremely versatile item because some of the other items I've mentioned are kind of character specific or build specific. This one slots in very easily to pretty much any survivor and any build, just because it just adds to your arsenal of what you already have. And I will say, because this item is so good, it is one of the rarer items to get, mostly because it is in the yellow category of items, but you do need to kill an overloading worm in your run to actually be able to get this item, and that only spawns in as a boss. And even if you kill it, it is still down to luck, but if you have a Trophy Hunter Tricorn, it will guarantee the drop, so be careful of that. The last item that I want to talk about is the Polyu, and what it does, it is 25% chance to fire lightning for 60% total damage up to 3 times, but plus 3 per stack. It does also corrupt all ukuleles because it is a void item. So in essence, this item is basically like the previous item. However, it is easier to acquire than the charge perforator, and stacking it also makes it very OP. If you manage to collect several stacks of this item, it is really good for bosses like Mithriks. I usually find that Mithriks is probably my biggest run ender, and this is the sort of item that really helps my confidence when I'm going to that boss and I know I can have a consistent damage output on him, because a lot of things, they are AoE or they're just as assist, whereas this is a very decent, consistent high damage output on single target enemies. One item that I really like to pair up with the Polyloo, if I can, however it is pretty rare, is to get the Leaf Clover, because this will actually give you an additional chance to proc whatever item you're trying to use. So for this, you get a 25% chance to fire. However, if you fail and you have the Leaf Clover, it will actually try one more time, +1 per stack, to try and hit that ability one more time. With all that being said, even though all these items are great, there is not really a get this item and win game instantly kind of thing. It still really depends on your strategy, your balance of items, having good movement, and a lot of other things that I could talk about for hours. But for this video, this is just some of the few things that I look forward to whenever I'm doing a run. If I get any of these items, it immediately gets me more excited because I start believing that I have a way better chance at actually succeeding. Personally, I still don't feel like I'm quite there with the game. I still feel like I'm pretty average. I'm currently going through Eclipse levels, so if you have any items you like to see in your runs or you think are really good, or things that you think I should be doing, let me know in the comments. But until then, see you next video.